What's better than a stick of cheese that's been breaded, fried, and served with a red sauce? Not much. But could we possibly make it better by smoking it first? Today we'll find out, because that's right, we're gonna be making our own smoked mozzarella sticks. But don't click away. I know a lot of you guys who are watching this video right now probably went down the YouTube rabbit hole of watching 20 different mozzarella stick videos before you come to this one. But I'm also gonna be working on an experimental mozzarella stick. I'm sure someone at some point on the internet has done this experiment. I just personally haven't seen it before, so that's what we're gonna try to do today. And if you're interested in seeing something new, stick around for that experiment. But with that being said, let's get cooking. I went to the deli of my local grocery store and asked very politely if they can cut me 3 big slabs of cheese, about 1 inch thick. If they give you a confused look, just remember to be super nice and tell them that you're trying to make giant mozzarella sticks. They might laugh at you at first, but I'm sure they'll be happy to do it. With each slab, I'm gonna get them into 4 fairly equal sticks. Before you make the cut, line up a knife first. Keep the tip of the knife in the middle, then the base of the knife line up in the middle as well. Make sure your knife is straight to ensure a clean cut, and cut the cheese. It's also a good idea to start in the middle and work your way out to make the sticks as even as possible. Now that we've cut the cheese many times, we have a mountain of cheese sticks to prep. Next, I'm going to place all these cheese sticks on a wired rack with space in between all of them to ensure smoke penetration on all sides of the cheese. Now at this point, I won't lie, I was a little worried that the cheese was cut way too big. I mean, look at these thick sticks. I thought maybe I can cut them down and make them thinner, but then they would be way too thin. It was too late. I just need to press on, no looking back. It's time to smoke this cheese. Before we go outside and smoke this cheese, I want to clarify something, because we are gonna be cold smoking this cheese. And I've used that term interchangeably a bunch of different times, especially when cooking sausage, and other people have pointed out if I am cooking something at 150 or 160 degrees, technically it's not cold smoking. And you are correct, and I apologize. We are actually going to be cold smoking the cheese today. What that means is having a fire that is really, really smoky, but almost no heat to it whatsoever. The last thing that we want to have happen is come back to our cheese after it smokes for a while and open up the smoker and have all the cheese at the bottom of our smoker. So to prevent that from happening, we're gonna make the smallest fire we possibly can. I'm gonna split a really thin sliver from my wood pile and burn about 1 to 2 briquettes. The briquettes will allow for the wood to keep smoldering without getting too hot. If you have wood chips or a cold smoking apparatus, this would be the perfect time to use it. I unfortunately don't have either. Once the smoke is rolling, I'm going to place the wired rack on the opposite side of the grill, double check to make sure I don't feel any heat coming off the wood before I throw the lid on, place the vents of the lid right over the cheese, close down the vents to keep the most smoke coverage, then I'm going to let them go for about an hour. After an hour, this is what the cheese looks like. They have a darker yellowish color, while the edges have a slight brown tint to them. For now, I'm going to set them in the fridge as I set up the breading station. Food with contrasting textures is something I'm always looking for. It always elevates the dish and makes it interesting, which is why I feel like most people like mozzarella sticks. You have this exterior that's super crunchy and flaky, and then inside you have this super melty, stringy cheese. And for that reason, we're actually going to be breading these cheese sticks twice with 2 different types of breading. The first layer of breading is going to be your traditional Italian breadcrumb. You can make your own, but I just bought something from the store. As you can see, it has a super fine texture, but I want something else to even contrast the breadcrumb. The second layer is going to be panko. Panko is a lot coarser than breadcrumb, and it also has an irregular shape that will add a more interesting texture. So you might be asking, why not just bread the entire thing in panko? I'm sure other people do that, and I'm sure it would work just fine, but my thought process is because the panko is a lot more coarse, it is a little bit more susceptible for that cheese to leak through, because you won't be able to cover it completely like you would with the breadcrumb. The breadcrumb is going to be used to really encase the entire cheese stick, and then on top of that, we'll add the panko to give a little bit more crispness and a little bit more texture. For the breading process, I'm going to have 4 bowls. First one will be all-purpose flour. Second, 4 eggs whisked together really well. Third bowl, the Italian breadcrumb, and lastly, the panko. Drop the chilled cheese stick into the flour, covering it completely and shaking off the excess. This step is important. The flour gives the egg something to hold on to. If you don't flour properly, the egg could slide off and take any breading with it. After that, shake off any excess egg, drop into Italian breadcrumb, and again, ensure it's completely covered. At this point, you can go straight into the egg and the panko for a double coat, but to be safe, I'm gonna throw them into the freezer for about 15 minutes to make sure that the outside layer is set. After those 15 minutes, throw into the egg, into the panko, and then add it back into the freezer for a couple hours or overnight to freeze everything, including the cheese. If the cheese stick isn't completely frozen, you run the risk of having all that cheese just melt into your fryer during the cooking process. So if you're gonna make mozzarella sticks, I would highly recommend prepping the cheese sticks the day before you actually wanna make them. Now we've come to the experimental portion of this recipe. Earlier I was talking about potentially the cheese sticks having some cheese leakage during the frying process. But what if we can completely eliminate the worry of that using this? These are spring roll wrappers, but not your typical ones that you're used to seeing that are made of rice paper. So for this one, we're gonna follow the same exact steps that we did before. The only difference is before we do our first initial dredge of flour, we're gonna wrap the cheese sticks with the wrapper to see if we can forever prevent cheese leakage. Just like the other cheese sticks, this will go into the freezer overnight. Today is the day. Today is Friday. This is what they look like. Obviously not much has changed in the appearance, which I think is a good thing. It means we breaded them properly, the egg didn't run off while it was sitting, and there are no visible bald spots. I call that a win. Let's talk about a few tools that you're gonna need. I'm using a Dutch oven to fry, having a good thermometer to keep track of your oil temp, a spider to drop and lift food out of your hot oil safely, and lastly, having a plate or tray with some paper towel on top to soak up the excess oil when the food is done. I'm cooking with some canola oil, but feel free to use whatever high temp cooking oil you'd like. I'm only filling a pot up about 1.5 inches. With our thermometer, I'm gonna bring it up to about 330. Once we're there, place the mozzarella stick on the spider and slowly drop it in. No cannonball drops, please. Most frying temps, if you're only gonna fry something once and not do a double fry, are somewhere between 350 to 375. But the one thing I wanted to do with these mozzarella sticks is to make sure that we can get them to be super brown on the outside while still giving it long enough time to melt all the cheese, which is why we're cooking at a little bit lower a temp. This is why having a thermometer on hand is super important. If your temp is too low, your food will never get that brown color that you're looking for, and the breading will be a little more susceptible to soaking in excess oil, so it could leave your mozzarella sticks to taste more greasy. If you cook too high, you'll probably burn everything and have a huge mess of cleanup. Ask me how I know that. If you're cooking more than one at a time, use a spider to make sure none of them are sticking together. As you cook, check the temps to see if you need to adjust the heat. After about 3 minutes, your mozzarella stick should look like this. There is some cheese leakage, which I think is a good sign that our cheese is nice and melty. We'll let this one rest on a tray on a paper towel while we cook our experimental cheese stick with the spring roll wrapper. As we look at the two side by side, they look really similar. One is definitely more uniform in shape because of the spring roll wrapper, but let's get to the part that you guys have all been waiting for, the cheese pull. The traditional cheese stick was amazing. Super melty, crunchy, salty, and with the unexpected smoke flavor I thought made it really unique. The texture on the outside was fantastic, and you can definitely feel the crunch you get from the double breading. The experimental one was still very good, and I love how the cheese is in its own kind of cocoon, but because of the wrapper, it just kind of reminded me of an egg roll. Didn't really want that flavor on a mozzarella stick. I also think that it does need to be fried for an extra 30 seconds. The cheese wasn't quite as melty as the traditional one, and I like how the traditional version can kind of smash and become one thing. The wrapped one is still very good, and I do think that there's gonna be a lot of people who actually prefer this method, but I'll leave that for you guys to determine. Next time you make mozzarella sticks, try both and let me know which one you like better. Now to conclude, did the smoke make the mozzarella stick better? In my own opinion, no. But I'm also one of those people that doesn't think that bacon makes everything better. In the same way, I don't think smoke makes everything better. It was still super delicious, crunchy on the outside, nice and salty on the inside, but that smoke flavor is something that I'm not really looking for when I'm eating mozzarella sticks. But if you are someone that really enjoys smoked cheese, you are absolutely going to love this one. And even though I don't really care for the smoke on the mozzarella sticks, these beat probably 9 out of 10 mozzarella sticks that you would buy in any restaurant. I really enjoyed making this video, just trying out different techniques. You know, cold smoking, frying food is always fun. A little bit of a mess, but it is fun. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please make sure to like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.